Hi! I'm now going to read chapter 22 of Dead End in Norvelt. It's time, Dad announced, and rubbed his hands together as he stood up from the breakfast table, to get an elevated perspective on Norvelt. What's that mean? Mom asked suspiciously, looking up from Mrs. Hamsby's obituary with tears in her eyes. I knew what Dad meant. Time for me to join the birds, Dad said smoothly as he flapped his arms. Just look out the window. I leapt up from my seat and nearly cracked the window glass with my forehead. The J3 was sitting at the beginning of the runway and was polished, painted, and poised to fly. When did you pull it out of the garage? I asked, without taking my eyes off the plane. I just had to take a ride in it, and secretly I wanted to fly it. Early this morning, he said casually, and tilted back into his chair, full of satisfaction for finishing a job Mom thought he couldn't complete. When I returned from dropping another empty Norvelt house in West Virginia, I had a couple of the workers help me move the J3 and then lift the wing in place so I could bolt it in. Can I go with you? Can I, please? I begged. I wished I had never traded Mom my one flight and the J3 ticket. No, you can't get in that plane, Mom said firmly, and she meant it. It's not even inspected. Oh, Jesus crust, I grumbled. I wish you would stop that fake cursing, she scolded. It's just as rude as the real thing. A test flight is all the inspection it needs, Dad replied. But Jack can help me get her ready. Whatever you need, I said excitedly. I'll be your ground crew. Then follow me, he replied. If you don't mind, I'll watch from the porch, Mom informed us, and stood up to clear the table. That is, unless you need me. I'll handle it, I said to her. It was finally my chance to be a part of the airplane crew. Dad didn't want me hanging out in the garage with him because it annoyed Mom. She thought that fixing up the J3 was too much fun for a kid who was being punished. She liked it a lot more when I was digging the bomb shelter in the sun. In a few minutes, we were standing in front of the J3 as Dad explained my duties with military precision. Your job will seem scary, he said, summing things up as he put his hand on my shoulder. But it's not dangerous as long as you do everything the right way, just like gun safety. Follow the rules, okay? Okay, I shot back, then took my place standing at the rear of the plane. I didn't want to mess anything up like I did when we went hunting. Dad placed both hands on the varnished wooden propeller. He rocked it back and forth a few times to get the fuel flowing in the engine, and once he smelled it, he put his entire weight into a big swing. The engine started, and the sound of the spinning propeller was as loud as a 1,000-pound wasp. My hair blew straight back, but the plane didn't budge forward because Dad had the wheels chalked with big wedges of firewood. I gripped the tail and watched him to make sure to stay out of the path of the propeller as he trotted around the wing and back to the fuselage, where he opened the clumsy cockpit door. He hopped up into his seat, closed the door, and stuck his hand straight out the window and gave me the thumbs up. That was my signal. I dropped to my hands and knees and crawled forward alongside the humming body of the plane. The prop wash peppered me with stinging bits of loose dirt and small gravel, but no big rocks. When I reached the left side wheel under the fuselage, I pulled away the wood chalk in front of the tire. Then I rolled over twice under the belly of the plane to the other wheel. Once I removed the chalk, I scampered back to the tail and waited. When Dad waved the back flaps up and down, that was my cue. I ran and jumped into the shallow bomb shelter, then flipped myself over and peeked up over the edge. He gunned the engine, and the J3 began to jitter and lean forward, and once it started rolling down the runway, it quickly picked up speed. I jumped out of the bomb shelter and ran after it like I was Orville Wright chasing his brother Wilbur. Wait for me, I yelled. Maybe he had waited, but I couldn't tell because by the time I reached the very end of the runway, I didn't know if he was off the ground or under it because I was covered by a thick brown cloud of loose dirt. I squinted and coughed and covered my face. Jackie, Mom shouted from the back porch. Where is he? I still couldn't see him, but I could hear him. I'm not sure, I shouted back and scanned the sky for any trace of him. Maybe he's going to Kitty Hawk. I had been reading about the Wright brothers. Or to New York to fly circles around the Statue of Liberty. Wilbur had done that, and I was sure it was a stunt that Dad would try. He'll be back, Mom reasoned. He has more empty houses to truck to West Virginia. And knowing him, he won't pass up the chance to make this town disappear so he can fly out of here for good. In the distance, we could faintly hear what sounded like a mosquito coming our way. It was quickly growing louder, and we knew he was circling back. But before we could spot him, he flew in low over the house, and Mom and I hit the deck. Jerk, she yelled, and waved her white-knuckled fist at him as she popped up from the porch. But by then, he was already beyond Fenton's gas station. That looks like fun, I gushed. I just couldn't wait to fly the plane. Dangerous is what you mean, she remarked as she brushed dirt off her knees. He keeps saying that plane is our ticket out of here, Mom said derisively. But all I want to do is slap it out of the sky. Are you afraid he'll crash? I asked. That's a really foolish question, she said, with her voice rising sky-high. Of course I'm afraid. He's my husband and your father, and he's flying around somewhere up there like a kite that broke away from its string. Now go get me those Japanese binoculars again. I want to see what he's up to. I dashed off to the garage and ran inside and flipped open the trunk and grabbed the binoculars and was heading over the garage door when he came in low over the rustling trees and just missed the back porch. Mom screamed, and her legs buckled as she plopped down on her rear. I'm going to kill him for that alone, Mom swore as she swatted more dirt off the back of her pants. He's just playing, I said, trying to make her relax even though my heart was pounding. But she was serious. You better tell Miss Volker to start writing his obituary, because he is sure to kill himself. She reached for the binoculars. But he's not an original Norvelter, I said, as she scanned the air. It won't matter to her. Now, what is he doing? She asked in her huffy voice as she concentrated her attention through the binoculars. I looked where she looked, and to me, he was about the size of a toy. He was dive-bombing a house like the Japanese did when they bombed Pearl Harbor. He was roaring down toward the roof, and then he would pull up and circle around and do it again. He's really lost his mind now, Mom uttered. I think he just buzzed one of those empty houses and threw his shoe out the window as he flew by. Really? I asked. He threw his shoe at a house? Yes, Mom said, confirming what she had seen before. Now he just threw his other shoe. He's like one of those flying aces from World War I who would just throw the bombs at their targets like hand grenades, I said. Or, she said, without enthusiasm, he's like a mentally ill criminal who should be locked up. He's just having fun, I cried out. What if you lived in that house, she asked. Would you think it's fun? You said it was empty, I reminded her. I hope I'm right, she said. If some old lady is in there, she might just drop dead. That was a good point. Then suddenly I saw him in the distance as he nosed the plane down toward the far end of the runway. I could feel my chest tighten as the wheels got closer and closer to the ground. You can do it, I said to myself. Come on, bring it in. And then the wheels touched down and he bounced up a bit but stayed in control. And in a minute he cut back on the throttle and rolled right up to the end of our runway. Once the prop stopped spinning, I ran up to greet him. What were you doing? I asked. We watched you buzzing over that one house over and over. Oh, I was off having a little fun, he said with a grin. I have to move that house to West Virginia, so I was just using it to practice my dive bombing technique. Well, I'd say you blew it to West Virginia, I confirmed. Next time I'll get some balloons, he suggested, and fill them with water. That'll be fun. We can drench them from the air, I said, including myself in the bombing raid. No, you won't, Mom said from over my shoulder. You will not be doing that with your father, so don't even ask. Just then, the telephone rang. I'll get it, I yelled, and took off for the kitchen. It was Miss Volker. What is your father doing? She hollered in a voice as shrill as the fire whistle. I just got a call from Mrs. Vinyl, and she said she thought Norvelt was being invaded by the Russians and that she was having a spell. Did you call the ambulance? I asked. Of course not, she replied. I told her to take a Bayer aspirin and have a glass of dandelion wine and relax in a hot bath. And why does your father have a plane anyway? She asked. He wants to fly out of town and never come back, I replied. He said his slice of the American pie is too thin in this town. He doesn't know what thin is, she said, with a great helping of scorn in her voice. In the Depression, you had a pie made out of grass clippings. Believe me, if he leaves, he'll find out it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. The grass clippings are not always greener on the other side. That's kind of what Mom says, I replied. Well, let's hope he's wise enough to listen to her, she said, and then the phone dropped and clattered across the floor. Are you okay? I yelled into the receiver. Dang hands, she hollered from a distance, and I could just imagine her pitching a fit. Goodbye, she hollered again, and the phone went dead.